Now available in paperback and ebook, The Man Who Rules the World. John Hayes must bring together men and gods to overcome a threat that seeks to destroy the planet. The Man Who Rules the World. Now available in paperback and e-readers everywhere. Many comic fans see Thanos as the ultimate bad guy in the Marvel Universe, and they see him as one of the greatest threats in the Marvel Universe due to his amazing and incredible cosmic powers. However, I've always thought that the Thanos character was overrated, and when I take a more critical look at the Thanos character and I deconstruct him, I don't see anybody I would ever need to take seriously as a comic book character. As I see it, as it relates to the Thanos character, he's not the ultimate bad guy, he's the ultimate simp. And the reason why he's the ultimate simp is because his whole mission and his whole purpose is to win the attention and approval of death, a woman. That's his whole goal in life, is to win the attention, favor, and approval of a female. That's what many men in the manosphere would call a simp, and that's not a man that anybody would ever respect. Now, whenever I take a look at all these stories with Thanos, a lot of people refer to this Infinity Gauntlet as one of Thanos' greatest stories. I feel that it's an overrated story that was padded out to make it go longer than it should have. And all throughout this Infinity Gauntlet, I saw nothing more than a guy who was sitting there for multiple issues, pussy begging for the attention of this death, trying to impress her, and thinking that if he had this ultimate power, he would be able to win the heart and approval of a female. However, when you listen to Thanos' arguments, they are just completely illogical. Now I understand people will say he's the mad god, but no, he's perfectly logical and rational in his own dysfunction. Because, again, when it comes down to the simp thinks that if he gives the woman power, she will then approve of him. But that's never the case, because whenever a man gives a woman power, he is coming from a position of weakness. And the Thanos character comes from a position of weakness from minute one. Because when you come from a position of weakness, what happens is no female will ever take you seriously, because you are following behind the female. And when you follow behind the female, what happens is you're giving the female leverage over you. And when she gets leverage and she gets that kind of power, what she's going to do is she's going to use that power to manipulate you and to control you. And in the case of Mistress Death, what she does is she doesn't even care about this guy, because he, again, comes from this position of weakness, and she's someone she doesn't have to take seriously. Why doesn't she have to take Thanos seriously? Plain and simple, he wants to give her more death. And how can a woman take you seriously if you're going to give her what she already has? This is where the Thanos character falls apart for me. He's sitting there, he's going to go all across the galaxy to get all these power gems and create this Infinity Gauntlet to be able to control reality and the universe. And what does he want to do? He wants to, one, impress a female, which is coming from a position of weakness. Two, he wants to give a female whatever she wants, and that's completely weak, because he wants to give her something based on her terms. And three, he wants to give her something she already has. When it comes down to death, death is always going to win at the end of the day, because everything has to die. This is the one piece of logic that the Thanos character never understands, and this is why the character is completely a weak character. Death is going to consume everything at the end of the day, so why would she want to speed up getting what she already has? That's what makes, again, the Thanos character a weak character. Now, I know many comic fans are amazed by his incredible displays of power, but his incredible displays of power, again, show me how weak this character is, and his beta male characteristics show me how he comes, again, from that position of weakness where you don't have to take him that seriously. If anything, your Thanos reminds me of nothing more than Elliot Rodger here on Earth, because as I was rereading the Infinity Gauntlet a couple of months ago, I then thought about Elliot Rodger's manifesto, because I had to read Elliot Rodger's manifesto as I was doing research for the second edition of Stop Simping, Why Men Don't Need Finance to Get Romance. And if you put Elliot Rodger's manifesto side by side with the Infinity Gauntlet, you will see that Thanos and Elliot Rodger literally sound alike, because Thanos, in the first couple of pages, like the splash page of the first issue or so, not one of the splash pages, calls himself a god. Elliot Rodger, in the last pages of his manifesto, called himself a god. And Elliot Rodger thought he was a god because he couldn't get the attention of females. And your Thanos thinks he's trying to become a god to get the attention of females that he likes. And when it comes down to your Thanos, he's trying to impress a female who doesn't care about him, in the same way that Elliot Rodger was frustrated about not getting the attention from the females he liked. And the reason why both of them really want this attention and approval of these females, again, is not because they like the woman. No, it's all about the social currency. The only reason why Thanos got the Infinity Gauntlet was to impress Death, so he could have social currency to get her attention and her approval. And that, again, was coming from a position of weakness. And that weakness was shown by later on in the Infinity Gauntlet when Mistress Death turned on your Thanos and showed him how little respect she had for all of his attempts and gestures to get her attention and her approval. She had absolutely no respect for him literally killing half of the universe, killing all of Earth's heroes, and trying to overcome all of these cosmic beings. She had absolutely no respect for him because, again, he came from that position of weakness. And that's why I always thought that this story was completely suspect. Because as a teenager in my late teens, early 20s, I always looked at this story and I always said, there's something wrong with this story. And it wasn't until I started doing more research into men's issues and learning about simps and beta males that I really started to understand what this story was all about. Because God showed me partially to this. He said to me Thanos was a simp. And then I looked at the book and said to myself, yes, he's a simp. He's really coming from that position of weakness. And that's one of the things that really came to me. And then as I was doing research for Stop Simping on Elliot Rodger, I really started to see the parallels between your Thanos and your Elliot Rodger. That's why I don't see him as some sort of super bad, because a super bad guy, again, has control over himself, he puts himself first, and he only deals with people on his terms. He comes from a position of strength. Your Thanos, on the other hand, comes from a position of weakness, so he can never be a super bad because he has no power over himself. Yes, he has great powers and great abilities, but the greatest power anyone could ever have is that power over self, that control over self, and that's the one thing most women will respect and most men will respect, is a man who has control over himself, and most importantly, control over himself internally, because a man who controls himself internally has control over his intangibles of manhood. And what are his intangibles of manhood? Again, like I say in Stop Simping, Why Men Don't Need Finance to Get Romance, your intangibles of manhood include your dignity, your self-respect, your self-worth, your inner strength, your inner character. All of these are things that men should consider valuable and so precious that they will never sacrifice them for anyone or anything in this world, because the greatest power a man can have, again, is the power over self. That's something I talk about in my novel, The Temptation of John Haynes, as well, and that's what really shows the Esteem character the reason why she needed to change, because she saw how much great power this man had over himself that he was willing to stand up to her in the spite of seeing her showing her demon face. That's how much power a man has over self. But when I look at this Thanos, again, I don't see this so-called super bad that many comic fans believe him to be. I mean, here was a man who was emasculated by Mistress Death when she turned on him in an Infinity Gauntlet, and then emasculated again by his own granddaughter, Nebula, when he got all that ultimate power, and then she took the Infinity Gauntlet off his dead body and then took it for herself. So this man, who most comic fans consider the greatest villain of all time in Marvel, he's nothing more than a beta male simp overall, and one of the weakest characters in the Marvel Universe. The main reason with that a lot of comic fans, I think, believe Thanos is super bad is based on the flash of his powers, but when you look at the substance of his character, he's really a very, very weak character. And as I see it, that purple skin is due to all those blue pills he pops, not because he took a red pill. Now, when I think of red pill characters, I think of characters like Doctor Doom or the Red Skull. Those guys, clearly, they are doing things on their own terms as bad guys. They are guys who go their own way. They do their own thing. And the reason why people see them as credible threats and take them more seriously is not due to their power. It is their power over self and control over self in critical situations. Now, the Red Skull is a little bit more emotional than Doctor Doom, but because Doctor Doom is a little bit more cold and calculating. But as I see it, those guys are bigger threats than your Thanos. A lot of people in the comic book world, they just get caught up in the flash of Thanos having ultimate power. But again, what really did him in was he had no ultimate power over self, and a man who has no power over self is a man who is completely powerless in this world, and no matter how much money he has, no matter how many clothes he has, no matter what he has in this world, he has nothing as related to his intangibles, and that's what makes him fall completely apart as a man. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try out The Temptation of John Haynes, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.